All right, so I should have said this at the beginning. If your Google Meet isn't something other than Sidebar or Spotlight, it's probably gonna be hard to see them. I don't know is is the screen that you're watching big enough?
I'm seeing a 4x4.
So is it big enough for you to see it okay, or is it?
Yeah, I mean the numbers on their screen are pretty small, but I can see them.
Okay, all right.
I can also kind of I can zoom in as well.
So there is the 3 vertical dots, and if there's a change layout, if you change it to Sidebar or Spotlight, it'll make the screen bigger. The 3 vertical dots next to the phone on the bottom menu.
Okay, and then you said change layout
to either Spotlight or Sidebar.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll change it to Sidebar, and that looks about the same. Spotlight is good too there. Yeah, I think I'm good. I can see it. So we're already well lit.
Yeah, these two have already
13:12.
I know it.
I guess we're recording already.
It makes commentating on them extremely difficult because for everyone else, you know, you can kind of talk about what they're doing as they're doing it, but they're so fast. It's really difficult. But I'll give you some background here. So they both have had 10 matches so far. They're both 10-0. Their regular season speed was about 1% different than each other, and it was far better than everybody else. So they were probably
2 people above the pack, huh?
Yeah, and they're both. I'm extremely impressed. They were both very, very good already, but they sort of used this first chance to have a regular competition to take it to the next level, really. And I mean, some of these things look almost impossible, but they also have known for quite a while that they were going to have a very tough match with each other, and they've been really pushing each other, even though they have this is the first time they've ever competed with each other, because Wenzel has not competed in 5 years before this calculation league, and Aaryan's too young to have competed more than 5 years ago. So it's their first. This is their first competition, and we are 19-19 already.
Yeah, this is incredible.
I'll briefly, for anybody who's watching this, Alex Mullen is here co-hosting it. Alex Mullen is Memory League star. I tried to add up his record, and I came up with 97-3 in the regular season. I'm not sure. So that sounds like he had his 100th match earlier this week with a win against Vishwa, who was in Calculation League Season 1. Been at the top of the standings, you know, it's Season 1 and now in Season 21, and almost every season in between. I know there's a short break in there somewhere. But welcome. These two are battling for Calculation League supremacy, I guess, but they got a lot of wins to catch up to 97-3. And I guess before talking about this, use the opportunity to ask you some questions. And to me, what's really impressive, especially given the demographics in Calculation League, is you're 32. I think you have a very busy life, and you've been continuing to compete at the highest level for a long time. I'm also 32. You know, young professional with a young family and a busy life. I cannot imagine how I would be able to compete at the same level that you're competing at. So I'm interested to hear what your sort of practice approach is, how you train for it, how you keep yourself in such good shape to be able to continue to do it over and over again. If I was in this match doing what Aaryan and Wenzel were doing, people would be shocked. So that's pretty much what you're doing in Memory League, and Do you have any secrets? What does your practice preparation look like during memory league?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I guess thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and learn more about calculation because I'm truly a newcomer to this. I apologize for my ignorance. But it's tried to do a little research beforehand. Seems very cool. I'm incredibly impressed by the things that you guys are doing. And it just blows me away. But yeah, so I think it's a couple of things. I guess just to answer your question though about my daily schedule, I try to keep it pretty manageable because, like you said, I'm 32. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I have another daughter on the
Sorry,
way.
how old is your daughter? How old is your daughter?
2.
2? Okay,
yeah.
my daughter is also 2. And you have another daughter on the way.
I do, yeah. So my wife is not quite as old as yours, I guess, but it's due to this November.
Okay.
So
okay.
it's within the year. But yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you.
No worries. And as I speak this, we're already up to 36 and 33. It looked like Wenzel had a little bit of an edge. And you tell me, like, I assume like just a couple points here or there, like it's maybe not super significant, at least at the speeds that they're going. It looks like Aaryan got a little bit of an edge now, but
it's not, and assuming one of them doesn't sort of botch an easier question. If there's something where they should be getting it, but they keep answering it wrong. If they were to lose 30 seconds. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. So if they were to lose 30 seconds plus a point, that's going to be relatively significant. I think my guess is that they're going to finish with like 1 point per 10 to 12 seconds. So if you lose 30 seconds, you've lost 3 points. Plus, if you lose a point, that's 4 points. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's a continue answering your question. So, like you said, I try to maintain something that is manageable for me, because if I tried to just sort of like do an intense like crazy training schedule, I wouldn't have been able to stick with it as long as I have. So like I started in 2013 doing memory competitions. I guess my first one was in 2014, but started kind of practicing for it in 2013. So I've been doing it over 10 years now. I try to just maintain sort of like a daily schedule that usually involves about, I would say, something like 20 to 25 minutes of training.
Okay.
Some of that is just doing the memory league events. So like for anyone who doesn't know, just to kind of summarize it briefly, there's 6 events. There are things like memorizing the order of the deck of cards, memorizing a sequence of 80 digits, memorizing 30 names and faces, and then there's national names, like more American style, or just like whatever country you're from, and style of names, which are simpler. And then there's international names set, which are like more complicated names from all over the world. And then there's memorizing 50 words, sequence of 50 words. And then the last one is a series of 30 images. So for each of those events, you have up to a minute to do the memorization and then 4 minutes to do the recall. Basically, going head to head, same as for calculation league. And you're trying to do a faster time, essentially. Assuming you both get everything correct, it's based on a time. If you don't get everything correct, then the person with the most accuracy wins that game. So yeah, doing those events is part of my daily practice. That's kind of the bulk of it, probably like 80%. And then I also do some like drills, basically just to practice the systems that I use for memorizing things. So everybody in memory league and doing memory competitions uses some sort of system that they've created to basically convert like a given set of 3 digits into a particular image that they use to memorize that.
Yeah.
And so, I'm doing drills where I'm just kind of looking at, let's say, like a series of flashing 3 digits, and then just like seeing my image for those digits, and just trying to make that recognition speed for the image as fast as possible. So I try to, that to me, something I've been doing for many years now, and it's kind of a manageable amount of training. And I think it's sort of what I've come up with as what I feel to be sort of the optimal approach to sort of keep me at a high level without overextending myself.
Is it a daily, like it's a daily 20-25 minutes, not it? like every day, but not like an average of 20 to 25 minutes, per
It's
day.
pretty
But
consistent.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you stop doing it for like a month, would it be there would be a significant decline, or
Yes.
maybe not?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
would. Because like I said, a lot of the events are kind of based on their speed of recognizing your images, and so if your ability to recognize the images kind of slows a little bit, or yeah, that'll kind of hurt you quite a lot. And a lot of it is just about kind of like getting a good rhythm and having all of the events like very well practiced to the point where like you're in sort of a flow and a rhythm, and you're not if you start to kind of lose focus, or that's just a recipe for mistakes and for slower speeds. So it is very much a practice based thing, where the more the better your training is, the better you're going to do.
So I'll just briefly comment here. It looks like Wenzel has taken a little bit of a lead here. He's up 9. But again, 9 is when the speed they're going. 9 is not particularly significant. Oh, it's definitely an advantage Wenzel right now. So to go back to what you're talking about though, if you had the time to do an hour a day, do you think that would actually noticeably help you, or are you kind of sort of where you think you maxed out and you're kind of maintaining your skill at this point?
No, I think I would improve. Yeah, if I was doing
Okay.
an hour, I would definitely get better. There is kind of a point of diminishing returns, I think, but certainly like an hour, I don't think that I'd really come super close to that. Like if I was training an hour, I do think I would definitely improve. Because a lot of the, especially now, it was very different even a couple of years ago. Like the level is much higher now, and just every year it continues to get higher and higher. So like when you're talking about, it doesn't maybe sound like a lot, but if you can, improve your average speed in like say a cards or numbers by like a second or two, I mean, it's pretty significant. And can be the difference between winning or losing a given game.
What are the age demographics in Memory League? Like what is your estimate of like the average age for the top competitors?
Yeah, I think it definitely skews a little bit younger. Like I'm one of the older people, and I think a lot of the older people, I would say, are like sort of veterans, people who've been competing for a while. Like it's less common, although certainly not unheard of, to see older people, say about 30, competing. Certainly those people are out there, but it's more common, for older people to be having done it for a long time. I would say the average age of competitors these days is probably somewhere between like 15 and 25. So it's like in that range.
And that's definitely true for Calculation League too. I think I cannot identify someone who after significant practice, like before 30, actually improved after 30. I mean, there are some people who started competing pretty late, and and then they were improving after 30. But I think, I mean, for me to like get to what these two are doing right now would be sort of a violation of like just basic science. I
looks like Aaryan's kind of closed it a little bit, closed that gap. He's on 2 now.
So Wenzel is 21 and Aaryan is Aaryan is actually still 13. He's turning 14 next month.
Wow.
Aaryan won our last World Cup when he was 12 in 2022, which was our only big in-person tournament that occurs every 2 years.
And that's sort of like considered the peak competition.
It is the peak competition. I think really this competition is already pretty close. The World Cup usually gets some participation from Japan, which tends to be the best country for mental calculation. I'll use that to change topics a little bit. So the big distinction in calculation is between abacus trained, Soroban trained individuals and Western competitors. And I don't know, are you any familiar with what an abacus is?
I mean, I know the very basics just in terms of like, essentially you're sliding like little tiles along a
beans, yeah.
beams.
Yeah,
and I do know that people use it as sort of a technique, but I in terms of basically anything beyond that, that's where my knowledge ends.
So I think, and I'm not expert enough to really be able to comment on this, but I think it's sort of analogous to using a memory palace for you guys. It is a visualization technique. The purpose of it is to take sort of the storage of numbers out of the part of the brain that normally deals with numbers and put it in like the spatial reasoning part of the brain. So they're using it. So the big distinction in tasks is that in addition tasks, if I gave you two 10-digit numbers to add, I'm sure you could add 10-digit numbers. It's not difficult. We start from the right and you add each column, and then you've added two 10-digit numbers. But when Westerners add numbers, we typically do one column or two columns at a time. It is very difficult to add 4 columns without breaking it up into individual columns. So, but if you're Sorbonne trained, they can add 4 or 5 digits at a time.
And that's an abacus technique.
Yeah. So Sorbonne, yeah. Sorbonne is just like it's a specific type of abacus, but it's the most used. I'm not really aware of anybody who's trained on a different kind of abacus. So for instance, Aaryan was in Italy in April, and he did like a Guinness Book of World Records performance where he had 5-digit numbers flashing on the screen every 0.4 seconds.
Yeah, I think I saw him.
Yes. So
yeah, 25 seconds or whatever.
Yeah, a Westerner could never do that because we have to break it up into smaller components. But it gives so that on the other side, the Westerners like Wenzel tend to try to offset that by having more developed quantitative reasoning, I guess. One thing when you watch Wenzel do it is there's virtually no hesitation for what the best strategy is to solve the question. Like anything, you can't really stump him. He knows exactly how to approach every question right away, and it's after years of a different kind of training, which is rather than sort of the brain training that is really what the abacus is used for. His training is more like mathematical reasoning training, which I think is sort of reflective of the difference between the abacus competitors and the Western competitors. Abacus competitors in competition are overall better. Since they started significantly competing, no Westerner has won our premier event. But again, Wenzel hasn't competed in 5 years, and he is right now. We can see he's up 10 right now.
Yeah,
it's extremely.
Where are we at in the clock, by the way? The overall clock. I know
let me look at the room real quick.
Minutes since
it looks like we're around 17 minutes. So we're getting to the point where if he gets a 30-point lead, it would end. But I really don't think either one.
All ordered. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's extremely good. It's sort of that visualization that Aaryan has, where he can work with many digits at one time. You have to have some counter advantage. And for Wenzel, it seems to be the quantitative reasoning strategy. He also appears to have like the fastest, like pure reaction time, processing time. So if the question comes up and it's really easy, he's always going to get a fraction of a second advantage on the really easy question because his reaction time seems to be slightly faster than anybody else's. So that's sort of the contrast in styles. And I guess the idea with this competition was to try to create something that balanced the two styles. And of course, when I created it, the Westerners are like, it favors the Abacus competitors, and the Abacus competitors think it favors the Western competitors. But it seems pretty fair to me. There's always room for improvement. This was just season one. We didn't know what we were doing. I'm kind of shocked that this app works, because I taught myself some coding over winter break and made this app, and had never coded anything before. So I'm surprised.
I mean, it seems like how close they are. You said they're only 1% speed difference. I mean, that seems like it's kind of a validation of the fact that it's probably pretty fair between Abacus and Westerners.
And you would there we have 4 different levels on the app, and like we have questions broken down into small, medium, and large. And each level, like the balance of the 3 categories changes a little bit. So on the finals mode, this is actually the first match that's been played on the finals mode, which is the most difficult mode. So the numbers get slightly bigger. So, the multi-operation, you're going to have more of them that include 3-digit numbers, less of them that are limited to 1-digit numbers. The numbers are getting bigger and bigger. I would think overall that would give Aaryan an advantage, because the Abacus training is helpful. It's designed to work bigger numbers. But right now Wenzel is doing great, and he's up to 16 now.
Yeah. What is the highest score that anyone's ever gotten? I guess it depends on the level. So the finals would be expected to be a little bit lower scores.
Right. And just for context, I think Wenzel and Aaryan are managing on playoff level, which is the second hardest level. They're actually slightly faster than anybody else is on the regular season level, which is the 3rd highest level. But so for the score, I mean, the timing is a lot different. So when I played Wenzel, he on regular season mode, he scored 126 in 10 minutes.
Oh wow!
So for 30 minutes, that's 378. That was
we're pretty far behind that pace.
Yeah. I think
as fast as they're going.
I think this will probably be at about half speed. I'm guessing the average final mode match is probably about half speed the regular season match. And in Wenzel right now, he is pretty close to exactly half that speed. He's up to 18.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out what I can actually comment on what they're doing. That they're doing. I guess I can do some background. So, like you guys have your standard tasks for Memory League. Obviously, you competed in Memorial, right? And when it was in the United States.
I did. Yeah, that was like in 2016, I think.
Yeah. Did you have any sort of I mean, I don't really know how Memorial event works, but did you have any sort of interaction with the calculation component or with people there?
Not very much. I mean, we knew that the events were going on at the same time, and like the kind of event-wide events were kind of featuring, like when they did presentations on stage and stuff like that, they would feature both sides. So I was seeing people like do calculation type tasks, like interacting with them heavily, and we were pretty much staying kind of to our own camps, like me with memory people and the calculation people with calculation people. So not terribly much.
Yeah. So I guess, I mean, if I recall, it was like Chung-Hee Lee was there. She was an older Korean woman.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I remember her from that.
Yeah. So just like Memorial it is the primary training software that people were using for our competitions. They have, 6 standard tasks on it, and 4 of them are used in our World Cup. So for many of the competitors, they've practiced these tasks over and over and over again. And you become, it is, I mean, it's probably no surprise to you, but for an average person, it's I think they'd be surprised at how much like the muscle memory allows you to do the task much faster than something slightly different. So for instance, our normal multiplication is multiplying 2 8-digit numbers together. And people use Memorial software and they practice them multiplying the two 8-digit numbers together, and they see it this formatted the same way every time, and it looks exactly the same. And it becomes as like simple as, tying your shoe, where you don't think about it at all. But if you change the format, if I change it so it's not two 8-digit numbers and instead it's a 6-digit number and a 10-digit number, it completely sort of undermines that learned process that you've been engaging in for so long, because now the approach is different and you can't rely on that built up muscle memory anymore. So what we've done in this competition is we've taken a lot of tasks that people are familiar with, but we tweak them a little bit so that they're not actually the same task anymore. So for instead of adding like 10-digit numbers, there might be a subtraction right in the middle of it. So you can't just So
we have, I mean, just to comment real quick, we have like a interesting event in Memory League, which is kind of like that. It's only reserved for the kind of highest level competitions like the World Championship or some of the like major competitions that we have. But it's called basically a surprise event. And so it kind of gets to that same sort of problem that people have when they go from something they've practiced really heavily to something they haven't. It's literally just like, it could be anything. Like they could just show you a series of like, it would be kind of maybe like the images event where you memorize a sequence of 30 images, but they might give you like all emoji, or they might give you all like random mazes with different appearances and you have to memorize the order of the mazes. Or it could be a cards event, but after every 3 cards there's a series of numbers. It completely just like throws off your rhythm, because just like you said, all of these events, like we're super hardwired to just like do that specific event, and if you throw something off the rhythm is gone. And so like you see how like much lower the scores and the speeds are in those surprise events compared to like the regular events. So that's interesting.
So at our World Cup, like the traditional format, I think they're tweaking it a little bit this year, but it's half sort of standard tasks and half surprise. And so in the past, like the best standard task competitor is Aaryan, who is sort of either number 1 or number 2, like ever recorded score in each of the standard tasks, except for 5 of the 6 standard tasks. And then the best surprise task performer is Wenzel. And so they have very different styles, but we tried to like, these look like standard tasks, but they're not really. They're like, everything's been tweaked so that it's sort of a compromise between the two styles. And Wenzel has made it to 21. Interesting. So
he's within 9 of ending it.
Yeah. So again, they're both 10-0. Wenzel has not. This is his first match where he has moved past the minimum time for the match. He has won with the
otherwise
30
immediately finished. Yeah.
And Aaryan did have one very competitive regular season match against our third fastest competitor. But it's a lot longer than they're used to doing this continuously. Especially, I'm not sure that Aaryan is used to continually calculating for this long, because he's used to doing more sort of short sprint questions, a minute or two break, a minute or two break. Wenzel's probably more history of practicing for like 30 straight minutes, but they're definitely both exhausted. When we had one match where the competitors were essentially even the whole match, and it went to full 60 minutes. They were like, the last 10 minutes, it was
right. They're like eyes are falling out of their head.
Yeah.
It's mentally taxing as I find Memory League. At the end of the day, you're still like, you at most you have to focus really hard for 5 minutes. Like that's the absolute most, and then you always get a break. At least for just a couple minutes where you can sort of like close your eyes and reset yourself as best you can. So going this long, where you have no break, is
Yeah.
pretty absurd.
And I mean, to be fair, they do have a little bit once in a while that the app will generate a question that is essentially impossible. And if they identify that really quickly, they can take their little 25-second break and just wait for the next question. For most people, there's a number of questions that are impossible, probably too many. For these two, they probably almost everything is possible at least. So
can I ask you a question that
yeah.
didn't strike me? Which so what would there be any sense to like trying to just cherry pick questions in terms of like, because I know if you put 5 wrong answers in, does it not go to the next one?
No, if you put 5 wrong answers in, you have to wait for the timer to go down to 0.
I see. So that would make no sense to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You put 5 in, you still have to wait. You just can't possibly get that question right.
Yeah.
Even, there's no 6th try, basically.
Right. And it's
gotcha.
So it's because, and this might probably isn't really obvious, but a lot of these answers, most of the answers include decimals. And for decimal answers, we have accuracy requirements. So in it, they're relatively lenient because it's a fast-paced competition. And compared to other competitions, sometimes people will say you need 5 decimals, 8 decimals, but we only require 2 significant digits.
Right, I did see that.
Which means they can round answers. So during the regular season, some people were pretty good at sort of essentially just estimating the answer and then trying to type in like 20 answers till they got it right. So we created, so that's why there's the 5 guess limit. But if you can't get it in 5, you have to wait till the timer runs out.
Gotcha. Can I ask you 2 other questions that so one is like, you said that there's kind of the abacus camp, which is more like Asia, and then Westerners. Is there a reason why like you don't have a lot of people from the West just like trying to copy the abacus technique?
That's a good question. And Chung-Hee Lee, that Korean woman from Memorial, she moved to United States a little bit before that competition to try to get people teaching the Memorial. She is phenomenally talented. I am sure she dominated the calculation events at that competition, even though she was in her 50s. But she has it's really tough to get the Westerners to buy in to learning abacus. It's part of the problem is it's sort of fundamentally at odds with the current American idea towards education. The younger you are when you start, the better, the easier it is to learn, the faster you learn. Even if you wait until you're like 8 or 9 to start to put the abacus in front of somebody, you're already waited kind of a long time. And we have, so
just because like the way your mind sort of thinks about numbers is sort of like messed up, so to speak.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Interesting.
People prefer, to start by 6 at the latest in Asia. You have in Japan is the one country where it is extensively taught still. And you can, in all across Asia, if you're from an educated family, you might look for Soroban lessons, but in Japan it's very common, and you'll find these are translated websites, so I'm not sure what the term is really, but you'll have infant abacus classes that I saw advertised in Japan. And I had one teacher who told me in Japan it is sort of normal for a 3-year-old to be able to multiply 2-digit numbers together. In America, it is not normal for a 3-year-old to be able to
that I know.
Yeah. So
adults can't do that most of the time.
It is discouraging because there's a lot of the sort of education climate on math. It's going further and further away from the approach that's used in Asia. It's like we should start even later, and they should not even be doing multiplication until they're like 9, and we shouldn't be timing them, or it's a lot of this, which I understand the theory that the more important thing is to teach sort of quantitative reasoning, and that sort of drilling arithmetic is not really a long-term benefit, maybe. But I think there's a lot of people who don't understand arithmetic competently at all. In fact, I think most people don't. And sort of we're missing, it's sort of like we're trying to teach, literature, but the kids can't read properly, or they're,
Yeah. I think, just to jump in real quick, memory is almost in an identical or an analogous situation, I'm sure, because like assuming I'm understanding you correctly, like on the calculation side, people may be kind of critical of like, oh, this is just sort of like rote, like machine-like stuff with no critical thinking whatsoever. People have the exact same criticism of memory, which is like, you're just using memory techniques to like, I'm sure you've heard this, like you're just memorizing crap. You're not actually quote unquote learning or using your critical thinking ability. And for the purposes of the sport, I mean, I think that's completely irrelevant because it's a sport. So, but also I think sort of along the same line, like my opinion whenever somebody asks me about this is like, I still think that memorizing facts is incredibly useful for the critical thinking that comes later. If you just sort of like completely ignore memorization, like your critical thinking and reasoning is going to suffer in the long run, in my opinion. So, and I think there's plenty of evidence to back that up. But yeah. Anyway, continue. Sorry for the interruption.
So, well, this is sort of the response from somebody in Asia is that like you're learning this is as sort of it's brain training, it's exercising your brain, and they would point to packets of studies that say doing this would help your attention span, your focus, your ability to perform, even your memorization, your ability to perform in all kinds of different things. So it's sort of like the idea is, when I say brain training, they don't think of necessarily like the arithmetic skill as the end. It's just this is to them one of the most efficient ways of training your brain to perform in general, and to that end, like in sort of in Japan, they have all kinds of rules on learning it, and some of these rules actually make you less efficient and less able to compete. Like you're actually using a less efficient approach to do the same kinds of questions, but they think it's better for that brain training process. So they force you to learn the less efficient approach. And that's sort of the value. I mean, the priority there is like, this isn't about like how fast you learn arithmetic. We just created this system to exercise the kids' brains and to develop them better. And I just, that just doesn't sound like a winning argument in America. I really struggle to see like American educators, taking this sort of like longer term sort of approach to it.
I know what you mean. Well, that's very interesting, certainly, about that kind of cultural difference.
Although, I mean, and Wenzel right here is proving that you don't necessarily need the abacus or the drilling practice. So Memoria, that software, I know you guys have better stuff that you use for memory, but for most competitors for calculation, we still rely on that original software that's really old at this point. Although I think at this point, sort of our software is probably more helpful. But as far as I know, Wenzel has never used that software and has never downloaded it before, which is extremely unusual for competitors. He just kind of practices whatever he feels like it, however he feels like it. He has there's no sort of structure or I don't know, schedule that he keeps himself to. It's just he's just sort of a natural prodigy at it. And he likes learning. He likes turning it into a game. He likes having fun with it. And somehow he's still getting better and better and better and better.
Why did he take those 5 years off?
I will keep my answer to that short, which is that he's not particularly happy with some of the competitions and the way that certain people have structured the competitions.
I mean, memory is no stranger to people having critical thoughts about competition. So, I mean, I totally get it.
I mean, to give a little bit, and I don't think he has. Oh, it is.
Oh,
Hold on, all right, hold on, Alex, hold on.
Mann, das war eben Schnitt.